Once upon a time, in a small town tucked away in the mountains, there was a young woman named Emily. Emily was a writer, and she had always been fascinated by stories of mystery and suspense. She had always dreamt of writing a novel that would keep her readers on the edge of their seats until the very last page. One day, Emily came across an old abandoned house while hiking in the mountains. She was immediately struck by its eerie appearance and the sense of foreboding that seemed to hang over it like a dark cloud. Emily couldn't resist the temptation to explore the house, and she soon found herself standing in front of its old, creaky door. As Emily pushed the door open, she was hit by a musty smell that seemed to have been lingering in the air for years. The interior of the house was dark and filled with cobwebs, and Emily could barely see a few feet in front of her. Despite the darkness, Emily couldn't shake off the feeling that there was something watching her from the shadows. Emily took a few hesitant steps forward, and suddenly, she heard a sound that made her heart skip a beat. It was the sound of a door creaking open. Emily spun around, but she couldn't see anything in the darkness. She tried to tell herself that it was just her imagination playing tricks on her, but she couldn't help feeling like she wasn't alone in the house. As Emily continued to explore the house, she found herself drawn to a staircase that led down to the basement. She knew that going down there was a bad idea, but she couldn't resist the urge to find out what was lurking in the darkness. As Emily descended the stairs, she could hear the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. The basement was pitch black, and Emily could barely see her own hand in front of her face. Suddenly, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold. It was the sound of footsteps coming closer and closer. Emily tried to run back up the stairs, but she stumbled and fell, hitting her head on the way down. When she came to, she found herself tied up in a chair with a hood over her head. She tried to scream, but her voice was muffled by the hood. Emily had no idea how long she had been there. She was alone in the darkness, and the only sounds she could hear were the ones she made herself. She had no idea what her captors wanted from her or why they had taken her, but she knew that she had to find a way out. Emily started to wiggle her hands, trying to slip out of the ropes that bound her. After what felt like hours, she managed to loosen the knots enough to free herself. She took off the hood and looked around the room. It was dark and filled with shadows, but she could see a faint light coming from a crack in the wall. Emily stumbled towards the light, and as she got closer, she could hear voices on the other side. She pressed her ear against the wall and listened carefully. She could hear her captors talking, but she couldn't make out what they were saying. Suddenly, she heard her name. Emily realized that her captors were talking about her. They were planning to do something to her, but she didn't know what. She had to get out of there before it was too late. Emily started to search the room for anything she could use to break down the wall. She found a hammer and started to chip away at the concrete. It took her hours, but she finally managed to make a hole big enough for her to crawl through. Emily emerged on the other side, and she found herself in a dark and unfamiliar place. She could hear footsteps coming. Continue above story. Emily quickly hid behind a nearby crate, hoping to avoid being seen by whoever was approaching. She peeked out from her hiding spot and saw a group of people dressed in black entering the room. They were all wearing masks, making it impossible for Emily to recognize any of them. Emily knew that she had to stay hidden and find a way to escape without being detected. She watched as the group started to move some large crates around the room, revealing a hidden trapdoor in the floor. They opened the trapdoor and disappeared into the darkness below. Emily knew that this was her chance to escape. She cautiously made her way towards the trapdoor and peered inside. She could see a dim light coming from below, and she could hear the faint sound of voices. Without thinking, Emily lowered herself down into the trapdoor and landed on a hard, concrete floor. She tried to keep quiet as she made her way through the dark room, using the walls to guide her. As she turned a corner, she saw something that made her blood run cold. In the center of the room, there was a table covered in strange symbols and surrounded by candles. There were people standing around the table, wearing hooded robes and chanting in a language that Emily couldn't understand. Emily recognized the symbols on the table as being from an old book she had read about dark rituals. Emily tried to back away slowly, hoping that nobody had noticed her, but she stepped on a loose floorboard and made a loud creaking sound. The chanting stopped, and all eyes turned towards her. Emily turned and ran as fast as she could, ignoring the pain in her injured leg. She could hear the sound of footsteps behind her, and she knew that she had to find a way out before they caught her. She ran down a long corridor and found a door at the end. She pushed it open and found herself outside, surrounded by trees. She could hear the sound of a river nearby and followed it, hoping to find a way out of the forest. As Emily stumbled through the woods, she started to feel like she was being followed. She could hear the sound of footsteps and breathing behind her. She tried to run faster, but her injured leg slowed her down. Suddenly, Emily tripped and fell, hitting her head on a rock. Everything went dark. When Emily woke up, she was lying in a hospital bed. She looked around the room and saw her family sitting beside her, tears streaming down their faces. Emily's family told her that she had been missing for several days, and they had been searching for her. They had found her unconscious in the woods, and she had been rushed to the hospital. Emily tried to tell them about the strange house and the people she had seen, but nobody believed her. They thought that she had hit her head and imagined the whole thing. Emily knew that what she had seen was real, and she couldn't shake off the feeling that she was still in danger. She couldn't go back to that house, but she had to find a way to uncover the truth. Over the next few weeks, Emily started to investigate the old abandoned house. She talked to the locals and did some research, and she found out that the house had been used by a secret society many years ago. The society had been involved in dark rituals and had been rumored to have connections with powerful people in the town. Emily knew that she had stumbled upon something big, and she knew that she had to be careful. She started to keep a low profile, but she couldn't resist the urge to continue her investigation. One day, Emily received a mysterious package in the mail. Inside the package, she found a cryptic note and a small key. The note read, "You have come too close.